In a small apartment outside Phoenix, Arizona, I sit at my kitchen table. My husband says my cramps, my bleeding, my fear are just age, just hormones. This morning, with cold coffee and warm light on the bills, I finally decide to trust my body instead of his voice. If you're hearing this story, tell me in the comments. Where in the world are you listening from? Before we begin today's story, please don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. Now let's get started. Linda Carson sat in the sterile waiting room, counting insurance forms, 12 different papers just to see a new doctor. At 62, she joked about Medicare and 11 supplements. But worry tightened her voice. 6 months of stabbing pain, 6 months of irregular bleeding. Her husband Gregory kept saying the same thing. It's menopause, Lynn. Your body's winding down. Gregory was a respected OB/GYN. He delivered half the neighborhood's babies. Linda wanted to trust him. But every cramp that doubled her over whispered something else. This is not normal. The cramping started after Gregory's late-night emergencies became more frequent. Another difficult delivery, he'd say, coming home at midnight with scrubs that smelled like perfume, not antiseptic. When Gregory flew to Atlanta to check on his brother after surgery, Linda finally acted. She made an appointment with Dr. Ramon Ortiz at the community hospital. She didn't tell her husband. The paper gown crinkled as Linda shifted on the exam table. Dr. Ortiz's forehead creased during the examination. He stopped mid-check and asked carefully, "Who's been treating you for this?" "My husband," Linda answered, forcing a smile. "He's an OB/GYN. I guess I'm his hardest patient." Something flickered across Dr. Ortiz's eyes, something that made Linda's stomach drop. He ordered an ultrasound. The machine hummed. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Linda's panic rose with each silent second. Finally, Dr. Ortiz pointed at a dark, jagged shape on the monitor. "Mrs. Carson, this shouldn't be here. It looks like an intrauterine device, deeply embedded." Linda's confusion turned to dread. "That can't be right. I never agreed to an IUD. I was terrified of them." "Doctor," Ortiz lowered his voice, "devices like this don't appear by accident. The tissue around it shows severe inflammation. We need to admit you today." He paused. "Depending on how this got there, you may be the victim of a crime." The room tilted. "Crime? Victim." The words felt foreign in her mouth. Linda thought of Gregory's gentle hands during her appendectomy 8 years ago. His voice saying, "Don't worry, honey. I'm right here." The way he insisted on using his private surgical center instead of the public hospital. Now those memories felt different, like photographs developing in reverse, showing shadows where she'd seen light. "Doctor," Ortiz handed her admission papers. "Mrs. Carson, I need to ask, has your husband ever performed procedures on you without full explanation?" Linda's hand trembled as she signed. The pen felt heavy. Everything felt heavy. "I thought I could trust him," she whispered. "He's my husband." "Doctor," Ortiz nodded sadly. "Sometimes the people we trust most have the most power to hurt us." Outside the window, Phoenix stretched under the desert sun. Normal people were having normal Tuesday afternoons. Grocery shopping, picking up dry cleaning, living lives that made sense. Linda Carson's life had just stopped making sense completely. In the stark pre-op room, Linda's hands shook as she signed another consent form. The nurse mentioned out-of-pocket costs that Medicare might not cover. For a moment, Linda worried about their retirement savings. Then fear for her life swallowed the money anxiety whole. Surgeon Dr. Evelyn Brooks entered with calm authority. She explained the procedure in simple terms: remove the embedded device, biopsy damaged tissue, photograph everything for evidence. Her voice stayed steady, but her eyes held gravity that made Linda's chest tight. "We'll take good care of you, Doctor," Brooks said, checking Linda's IV. "This shouldn't have happened to you." The anesthesia mask descended. Linda's last thought was of Gregory's voice 8 years ago. "Don't worry, honey. I'm right here." When Linda woke, fire burned through her abdomen. "Doctor." Brooks stood beside her bed, holding a small clear container. Linda blinked through the haze, trying to focus. Inside the container lay a blackened, twisted piece of metal. The IUD looked vicious, like something dredged from a shipwreck. Even through the plastic, it radiated menace. "This model hasn't been legal in over a decade, Doctor," Brooks explained quietly. "It's been linked to uterine perforation and cancer. Based on the scar tissue, it's been inside you approximately 8 years. 8 years. Linda's mind scrambled backward to her emergency appendectomy. Gregory had insisted she use his private surgical center instead of the public hospital. "Better care," he'd said. "I can watch over you personally." She remembered the anesthesia mask coming down. his voice promising he'd be right there. The way he dismissed her questions about the procedure afterward. Just standard appendix removal, honey. Nothing to worry about. Now everything felt different. Like looking at a familiar photograph and suddenly seeing a stranger's face in the background. Later that afternoon, a woman in a gray suit appeared at Linda's bedside. She introduced herself as Detective Carla Reeves from the Phoenix Police Department's Special Victims Unit. Her badge made everything real. Mrs. Carson, Detective Reeves said, setting a small recorder on the bedside table. I need to ask you some questions about your medical history. Linda tried to laugh it off. You think my husband tried to hurt me? The sound died in her throat. The detective's expression didn't change. Under Arizona law, inserting a medical device without informed consent constitutes aggravated assault. When that device is banned and potentially lethal, we're looking at possible attempted homicide. The words hit Linda like cold water. Attempted homicide. Her Gregory, who brought her coffee in bed every Sunday, who held her when her mother died. Detective Reeves asked detailed questions. About surgeries. About anesthesia. About times when Gregory had complete control over Linda's unconscious body. With each answer, Linda felt something fundamental shifting. Like wallpaper peeling away from walls she thought were solid. Did you ever question why he insisted on using his private facility for your appendectomy? Linda's voice came out smaller than she intended. He said it was better care. More personal attention. Did you see the pathology report from your appendix removal? No. He said everything was normal. Standard procedure. Detective Reeves made notes. The pen scratched against paper. The sound felt loud in the quiet room. Mrs. Carson, can you think of any reason your husband might want to prevent you from having children? The question hung in the air like smoke. Linda thought of their conversations about starting a family. How Gregory always found reasons to postpone. Let's wait until next year, he'd say. When my practice is more established. Next year had become 8 years of waiting. I wanted children, Linda whispered. We talked about it constantly. He always said we had time. The detective nodded sympathetically. Did he ever mention concerns about your health during pregnancy? No. He said I was perfectly healthy. Just that timing wasn't right yet. More notes. More scratching pen sounds. Linda watched Detective Reeves' face, searching for clues about what all this meant. Mrs. Carson, I need you to understand something. This device wasn't placed by accident. Someone made a conscious decision to put it inside your body without your knowledge or consent. The room felt smaller suddenly. The walls seemed to press closer. But why would he? Linda's voice cracked. We're married. We love each other. Detective Reeves leaned forward slightly. Sometimes the people who claim to love us do the most damage, especially when they think they know what's best for our lives. Linda closed her eyes. Behind her eyelids, she saw Gregory's face the morning after her appendectomy. How he'd brought her soup and medication. How gentle he'd been during her recovery. Had he been caring for her or covering his tracks? When she opened her eyes, Detective Reeves was watching her carefully. I know this is overwhelming, the detective said, but I need you to think about other times your husband might have made medical decisions without fully explaining them to you. Linda's mind raced through years of doctor visits, medications, procedures. Gregory always handled everything. Always simplified the explanations. Always told her not to worry about the details. She'd trusted him because he was her husband. Because he was a doctor. Because questioning him felt like questioning everything she'd built her life around. Now she wondered what else she didn't know about her own body. Her own life. Detective Reeves left her business card on the bedside table. Call me when you're ready to talk more. There's no rush, but Mrs. Carson? She paused at the door. You didn't do anything wrong. This isn't your fault. After the detective left, Linda stared at the ceiling tiles. The hospital hummed around her with machines and voices in the constant activity of people trying to heal. She thought about the last 8 years, the pain she'd endured, the questions she'd never asked, the trust she'd given so completely. Outside her window, Phoenix sprawled under the desert sky. Somewhere in that city, Gregory was probably finishing his afternoon appointments, smiling at patients, acting like the caring doctor everyone believed him to be. Linda wondered how many other women were lying on exam tables right now, trusting doctors who might be lying to them. The thought made her feel sick and angry and completely alone. But also, for the first time in months, not crazy. 3 days later, Linda returned to the quiet cul-de-sac she'd once called home. The house felt different now, like walking through a museum exhibit of someone else's life. Photos lined the mantel, their wedding day, anniversary dinners, Gregory receiving medical awards, the diplomas on his office wall, cards from grateful patients. Everything looked exactly the same. but felt completely foreign. Detective Reeves called that morning. "We obtained a warrant for your husband's clinic. Would you like to come along?" You don't have to, but sometimes seeing things firsthand helps victims understand what happened. Linda said yes. She needed to see whatever truth was hiding behind Gregory's gentle smile. The Women's Health Center looked welcoming from outside. Soft music played in the waiting room. Pastel walls displayed inspirational quotes about motherhood and healing. A coffee station offered free refreshments for nervous patients. Linda felt sick. Her husband had built this sanctuary while slowly poisoning his own wife. Detective Reeves led Linda to Gregory's private office. The space smelled like his cologne and printer ink. Medical journals sat neatly stacked. A leather chair faced a mahogany desk that probably cost more than Linda's car. In a locked drawer, they found device disposal logs. Official forms tracking medical equipment that should have been destroyed. One entry made Linda's blood freeze. A banned IUD, same model as hers, marked defective destroyed, dated 8 years ago. Signed by Dr. Gregory Hale. He documented destroying the device that he put inside you, Detective Reeves explained quietly. This shows premeditation. On a shelf sat a framed photo Linda had never seen before. Gregory at a charity gala, arm around a much younger woman in scrubs. Linda recognized her vaguely from holiday parties. A nurse named Erin something. In the photo, they looked comfortable together, intimate, like a couple posing for their own anniversary picture. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. The office door opened. Erin Morales walked in, stopped short when she saw Linda and the detective. "Mrs. Carson?" Erin's voice cracked. "I didn't know you'd be here." She clutched a small pharmacy bag, trying to hide it behind her back. But Linda caught the logo, CVS, and the telltale shape of a pregnancy test box. The air in the room grew thick. Linda noticed Erin's left hand. A delicate diamond ring caught the overhead light. The setting looked eerily similar to Linda's own wedding set. Like Gregory had a type. A template. "Miss Morales," Detective Reeves said calmly, "we're investigating some irregularities in Dr. Hale's medical practice. Would you mind answering a few questions?" Erin glanced between Linda and the detective. Color drained from her face. "I don't know anything about medical stuff," she stammered. "I just work reception and basic nursing duties." "What about your personal relationship with Dr. Hale?" Erin's composure cracked. Her hands shook as she set down the pharmacy bag. "It's not what you think," she whispered. "He told me his marriage was complicated, that you couldn't have children, that doctors warned you'd die if you got pregnant." Linda felt the words hit like physical blows. Couldn't have children. Would die if pregnant. Lies built on lies. "He said your marriage was just paperwork," Erin continued, tears starting. "That you stayed together for financial reasons, but there was no real relationship left." Detective Reeves took notes. Linda stood perfectly still, absorbing the magnitude of Gregory's deception. "Miss Morales, do you and Dr. Hale have children together?" The question hung in the air like smoke from a fire. Erin broke down completely. "Two. A boy and a girl. Tyler's 8 and Emma's 5. They think he's a doctor who travels for work. He helps with rent on our apartment by the light rail." Linda's grief transformed into something colder, more focused. "How many years?" "What? How many years has this been going on?" Erin wiped her eyes with a tissue. "About 9 years. Since I started working here. 9 years. 1 year before Linda's appendectomy. Gregory had been planning this parallel life before he destroyed Linda's chance at motherhood." "Where do you live?" Linda asked quietly. "Tempe, near the university. He said it was better if we stayed separate until..." Erin's voice trailed off. "Until what?" "Until you were gone." The words settled in the room like dust after an explosion. Until you were gone. Not divorced. Gone. Linda thought about the banned IUD rotting inside her for 8 years. The precancerous cells Dr. Brooks had found. How Gregory had delayed Linda's treatment for months, insisting it was just menopause. Detective Reeves closed her notebook. "Miss Morales, we're going to need you to come to the station for a formal statement." After Erin left with another officer, Linda sat alone in Gregory's office chair. She opened his desk drawers methodically. Bank statements, insurance forms, a spare set of keys she didn't recognize. In the bottom drawer, wrapped in a cloth bag, she found a second cell phone. The screen lit up with missed messages. Text chains with Erin's stretching back years. Photos of children at birthday parties. Christmas mornings, first days of school. Everything Linda had wanted. Everything Gregory had told her they couldn't afford. Everything he'd said they weren't ready for. He'd been living the life Linda dreamed of with someone else, while slowly killing her to make room for his real family. Detective Reeves found Linda holding the phone, staring at a photo of Gregory teaching a little boy to ride a bicycle. "You okay?" Linda looked up. "I spent 8 years thinking something was wrong with me, that I was broken somehow, that I wasn't wife material or mother material." She set the phone on the desk. "He made me feel grateful for the crumbs he threw me. Made me think I was lucky to have any husband at all at my age." Detective Reeves sat down across from her. "What do you see now?" Linda looked around the office. At the photos of Gregory's secret life. At the disposal forms documenting his methodical planning. At the evidence of a man who'd built his happiness on top of her slow destruction. "I see someone who stole my life twice. Once by taking away my chance to have children, and again by making me think it was my fault I didn't have them." Outside the window, Phoenix stretched under the afternoon sun. Somewhere in this city, 2 children were waiting for their father to come home. Children who had no idea their existence was built on their stepmother's grave. Linda Carson had spent 62 years trying to be good enough, kind enough, patient enough, grateful enough. For the first time in her life, she was angry enough. That night, Detective Reeves called with a warning. "Do not confront your husband alone when he gets back from Atlanta. Wait for backup. Wait for lawyers. Wait for anything except facing him by yourself." Linda hung up and stared at her reflection in the dark kitchen window. 62 years of being reasonable. 62 years of waiting for permission to feel angry. For once, she wanted to see the truth before lawyers and reporters turned it into evidence. Gregory's home office smelled like his cologne and the faint chemical tang of printer ink. His computer woke up when she touched the mouse. The password prompt appeared 12 empty spaces waiting to be filled. Linda tried their anniversary. Access denied. She tried his birthday. Access denied. Then she tried his mother's birth date, the woman who'd never liked Linda, who'd always made comments about Gregory, settling down too late in life. The screen unlocked immediately. That told Linda everything she needed to know about her place in Gregory's heart. The desktop showed neat folders arranged in alphabetical order, medical files, tax documents, investment portfolios, and one folder that made Linda's stomach drop, Forever West. She clicked it open. Photos filled the screen. Gregory and Aaron at the Phoenix Zoo, both of them pushing a double stroller. Gregory teaching a little boy to throw a baseball in a park Linda had never seen. Aaron in a hospital bed, glowing and exhausted, holding a newborn while Gregory cut the umbilical cord. Christmas morning in an apartment living room. 2 children tearing open presents while Gregory sat on a couch that wasn't Linda's couch, wearing a bathrobe. Linda had never seen, looking happier than she'd ever seen him look. Beach vacation photos from San Diego. Gregory building sandcastles with the children while Aaron watched from a beach chair, her pregnant belly round under a sundress. Linda and Gregory had talked about taking a trip to San Diego for years. "Maybe next summer," he always said, "when the practice isn't so busy." He'd been too busy taking vacations with his real family. Linda scrolled through years of stolen moments. Birthday parties, school plays, family dinners around a table that seated 4 instead of 2. Everything looked warm and natural and completely authentic. Like watching home movies of the life someone else was living in your place. She found a folder within the folder labeled Email Archive. Her cursor hovered over it for a long moment before she clicked. The messages stretched back 8 years, right to the week of Linda's appendectomy. The first email made her hands shake. Gregory writing to Aaron, "I handled the Linda situation during her surgery today. No more questions about heirs or inheritance complications. We can plan our real future now." Aaron's reply, "Are you sure she won't find out? What if she asks questions?" Gregory, "She trusts me completely. Always has. She'll believe whatever I tell her about the procedure." More messages. Weeks later. Gregory complaining about Linda's recovery. "She keeps crying about wanting children. If she only knew how brilliant her doctor is at problem solving." Aaron sending heart emojis, thanking him for choosing us over her. Gregory describing Linda's pain during the months that followed. "I keep giving her hormone pills that do nothing. She thinks it's menopause." The irony is perfect. Linda scrolled faster, her breathing shallow. Each message felt like a scalpel cutting deeper. Gregory bragging about Linda's trust. "She actually thanked me for taking such good care of her during the appendix surgery. Said I was the best husband in the world." Aaron joking back, "Poor thing has no idea she's married to a genius." Another folder, financial documents. Monthly transfers to Aaron labeled child support and household expenses. A down payment on a condo in Tempe, purchased under Aaron's name. Insurance policies for Tyler and Emma that Gregory paid out of his personal account. During those same months, Gregory had told Linda they couldn't afford the RV she'd dreamed of for retirement. Money's tight, he'd said. Medical malpractice insurance keeps going up. Maybe in a few years. He'd been spending her retirement money on the family he'd chosen over her. Linda found a spreadsheet titled Future Planning. 2 columns. One labeled Phoenix House with Linda's name. One labeled Tempe Condo with Aaron and the children's names. Under Linda's column, estimated life expectancy based on untreated precancerous conditions. Projected timeline for natural progression. Life insurance payout amounts. Under Aaron's column, children's college funds. Wedding planning budget. Vacation destinations. Gregory had been calculating how long Linda would take to die. The phone rang. Detective Reeves again. Mrs. Carson, I wanted to check on you. Are you okay? Linda couldn't speak. The screen blurred as tears filled her eyes. Linda, are you there? He was waiting for me to die, she whispered. He had it all planned out. How long it would take. How much money he'd have afterward. Where are you right now? His office. Looking at his computer. Okay. Stay on the line with me. Tell me what you're seeing. Linda described the photos, the emails, the financial spreadsheets. Each detail made her voice smaller, weaker. Mrs. Carson, I need you to listen to me carefully. What you found is evidence of premeditated attempted murder. This wasn't impulse or even crime of passion. This was a long-term plan to eliminate you. The words hit Linda like cold water. Eliminate, not divorce. Not abandon, eliminate. The pathology results came back this afternoon, Detective Reeves continued. The precancerous tissue around the IUD was progressing rapidly. If that device had stayed in another year, maybe 2, you'd be looking at late-stage uterine cancer. He knew, Linda said numbly. He knew exactly what would happen. Yes, he did. Linda stared at the computer screen, at photos of Gregory's happy life built on top of her grave, at emails where he joked about her pain, at spreadsheets calculating her death. Something inside her chest cracked open. Not the explosive rage she'd expected. Something quieter and more dangerous, like ice forming over deep water. Mrs. Carson, are you still there? I'm here. We're preparing charges against your husband. Aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, medical battery, insurance fraud, and given what you've just found, attempted murder in the first degree. He could face 15 years to life. 15 years to life. Linda tried to imagine Gregory in prison orange instead of medical scrubs. The man who'd held her during her mother's funeral, who'd brought her coffee every Sunday morning for 17 years, who'd been slowly killing her while pretending to love her. Mrs. Carson, I know this is overwhelming, but I need you to understand something important. This is not your fault. You are not responsible for trusting someone who was lying to you. Linda wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I feel so stupid. You feel human. There's a difference. On the computer screen, a new email notification popped up. A message to Gregory from Aaron, sent 20 minutes ago. Kids are asking when Daddy's coming home. Tyler lost his first tooth today. Wish you were here to see. Linda stared at the message. At this woman who'd been living the life Linda wanted. Who'd been raising the children Linda should have had. Who'd been sleeping with the man who'd promised Linda forever. But Aaron had been lied to as well. Told that Linda was infertile, dying, just a legal formality keeping Gregory tied to paperwork. They'd both been victims of the same man's carefully constructed lies. For the first time since finding the ultrasound, Linda didn't think about what would happen to Gregory. She thought about what would happen to her if she kept pretending this was anything less than evil. That shift from protecting him to protecting herself felt like stepping off a cliff into free fall. Detective Reeves? Yes? When are you arresting him? Tomorrow morning when his plane lands. We'll have patrol units waiting at Sky Harbor. Linda looked around Gregory's office, at his diplomas on the wall, at photos of his medical achievements, at the awards for community service and charitable giving. All of it built on lies. All of it paid for with money he'd stolen from her future, while slowly poisoning her body. I want to be there, Linda said quietly. That's not advisable. I want to see his face when he realizes I know. Detective Reeves paused. Linda, I understand the impulse, but confronting him could be dangerous. He's been confronting me for 8 years. He just didn't tell me. Linda's voice was steadier than it had been in months. The crying was over. The begging was over. The trying to understand or forgive was over. I want to look him in the eye when the handcuffs go on. I want him to know that I know exactly what he did. Through the office window, Phoenix sparkled under the desert stars. Somewhere in those lights was an apartment where two children were going to bed, wondering when their father would come home. Tomorrow, those children would learn their father wasn't the hero they thought he was. Tomorrow, Linda would learn if she was strong enough to stop being the victim he'd made her into. Tonight, for the first time in 8 years, the pain in her abdomen felt like something other than mysterious illness. It felt like justice demanding to be born. 2 days before Gregory's arrest, Linda sat alone in her kitchen with cold coffee and 17 years of memories demanding examination. The house felt like a crime scene waiting for yellow tape. She'd met Gregory at 45, a widowed school secretary working late, filing student records while the janitor vacuumed hallways. Gregory had been speaking at a health fair about women taking charge of their medical care, ironic considering what followed. He'd brought her coffee afterward, listened to her talk about losing her first husband to a heart attack at 38, about starting over when everyone else her age was settled into their forever lives. Gregory's attention felt like grace. Older women would understand the feeling someone finally seeing you again after years of being invisible. But the red flags had been there from the beginning. Linda remembered their first serious conversation about money. Gregory suggesting they combine finances for simplicity. His gentle explanation that doctors face constant lawsuits, so assets needed protection through careful planning. She'd signed papers she didn't fully understand. Grateful he knew about all that legal stuff. The joint account went into his name only. Safer this way, he'd said. Trust me. She had trusted him. Completely. When Linda turned 55 and mentioned fertility treatments, Gregory's reaction seemed loving at the time. He'd stroked her hair and said, "Honey, at our age, let's focus on enjoying life together. Besides, pregnancy could be risky for someone with your history." "What history?" Linda had asked. "Your previous miscarriage," Gregory said gently. "The emotional trauma. Your body remembering that kind of loss." Linda had never had a miscarriage, but Gregory spoke with such certainty, such medical authority, that she began doubting her own memory. Maybe the stress of losing her first husband had damaged her somehow. Maybe she'd blocked out painful medical details. She'd stopped asking questions about children. Gregory always scheduled her checkups at odd hours. Early morning or late evening, when his office was empty. No nurses in the room. No second opinions. It felt intimate then, like special treatment. Now Linda understood it was isolation by design. When her periods became irregular 2 years ago, Gregory prescribed hormone adjustments without explaining what the pills actually contained. When Linda suggested seeing a specialist, Gregory's face would tighten. "You don't trust me?" he'd ask quietly. "After everything I've done for you?" The guilt always worked. Linda would apologize for doubting him, thank him for being patient with her silly worries. She remembered the night she'd found unfamiliar credit card statements in Gregory's medical bag. Charges for children's clothing stores, toy shops, pediatric dental visits. When she'd asked about them, Gregory explained they were charitable donations and professional expenses for underprivileged families. "I volunteer at free clinics sometimes," he'd said. "These families can't afford basic health care for their kids." Linda had felt proud of her husband's generosity. She'd encouraged him to do more charity work. Those children's dental bills had been for Tyler and Emma, Gregory's real children, the family he was building while slowly destroying Linda's body. Linda thought about the emergency appendectomy 8 years ago, how Gregory had insisted on using his private surgical center instead of the hospital where her insurance had better coverage. "I want to handle this personally," he'd said. "Make sure nothing goes wrong." She'd been touched by his concern, grateful for a husband who cared enough to sacrifice convenience for her safety. The night before surgery, Gregory had been unusually affectionate, holding her close, stroking her hair, whispering how much he loved her. Linda had felt cherished, special. Now she wondered if he'd been saying goodbye. During recovery, Linda had suffered weeks of cramping that Gregory dismissed as normal surgical discomfort. When the pain persisted, he'd prescribed stronger medications and told her to be patient. "Healing takes time at our age," he'd said kindly. "Your body isn't 20 anymore." Linda had felt embarrassed for complaining, weak for not handling pain better, grateful for a husband who remained gentle even when she was being difficult. Those cramps had been her body trying to reject the foreign device Gregory had implanted without her knowledge. Her own immune system fighting against the poison he'd hidden inside her. Linda remembered asking Gregory once why they never had children. She'd been feeling especially lonely, watching neighbors with grandchildren, wondering what she'd done wrong in life. Gregory had held her while she cried, Some things aren't meant to be, he'd whispered. Maybe God has different plans for us. She'd felt comforted by his faith, grateful for a husband who could find meaning in disappointment. God hadn't taken away Linda's chance for children. Gregory had stolen it with surgical precision. The memories kept coming. Small moments that seemed loving at the time but felt sinister now. Gregory insisting on managing all her medical care, dismissing her questions about medication side effects, scheduling her appointments when no one else was around, always protecting her from information, always simplifying decisions, always knowing what was best. Linda had thought she was lucky to have such an attentive husband, a medical professional who understood her body better than she did, someone who cared enough to handle the complicated stuff. She'd been grateful to let him think for her. Now Linda understood that gratitude had been the trap. Gregory had weaponized her trust, her insecurity about aging, her fear of being alone again. He'd made her feel lucky to accept crumbs while he built his real life elsewhere. The cruelest part wasn't the IUD. It wasn't even the lies about children. The cruelest part was how Gregory had made Linda complicit in her own destruction. How he'd trained her to thank him for hurting her, to apologize for doubting him, to feel grateful for abuse disguised as care. Linda thought about other women her age. How many were sitting in doctors' offices right now, accepting explanations they didn't understand? How many were taking medications without asking questions? How many were trusting husbands or doctors or sons who claimed to know better? How many were being slowly poisoned by people they loved? The coffee had gone completely cold. Outside her kitchen window, Phoenix woke up to another ordinary Tuesday. Normal people were starting normal days, trusting normal people who probably weren't systematically destroying their lives. Linda envied them their innocence. Tomorrow, Gregory would be arrested. The newspapers would call it a shocking betrayal. People would wonder how such a respected doctor could do something so evil. But Linda understood now that evil rarely announced itself with horns and pitchforks. It came wearing a white coat and speaking with gentle authority. It brought coffee and flowers and promises of protection. It made you feel grateful while it slowly killed you. For 17 years, Linda had been the perfect victim. Trusting, grateful, eager to please. Everything a predator could want and pray. Tomorrow, that version of herself would die along with her marriage. And Linda was ready to let her go. The next afternoon, 2 unmarked patrol cars rolled quietly into Linda's cul-de-sac. Detective Reeves called from the driveway, voice calm but alert. "We're here, Mrs. Carson." His flight landed 20 minutes ago. "Are you sure you want to watch this happen?" Linda stood at her living room window, watching neighbors peek through blinds. Mrs. Henderson from next door had stepped onto her porch, pretending to water plants while studying the police cars. "I'm sure," Linda said into the phone. "For the first time in years, I'm completely sure about something." She'd positioned herself in Gregory's office, the banned IUD container on his desk like evidence in a courtroom. The computer screen displayed the Forever West folder, photos of his secret family arranged like accusations. Linda heard Gregory's car in the driveway, the familiar sound of his key in the lock, his footsteps across the hardwood floor. "Lynn, I'm home early. Brought you a surprise." Gregory appeared in the office doorway carrying takeout bags and a bouquet of supermarket roses. The same flowers he'd brought her for 17 years. Cheap roses that wilted within days, but Linda had always pretended they were beautiful. "Thought you'd be resting after your hospital stay," he said, setting down the bags. "I got your favorite Thai food from that place on—" He stopped cold, his eyes fixed on the computer screen. Color drained from his face as he recognized the photos of Tyler and Emma building sandcastles. "What are you doing on my computer?" The question came out sharp, automatic. Then he caught himself, forcing his voice back to its usual gentle tone. "I mean, honey, this contains confidential medical files. Legal liability issues if the wrong people. Is this what For Better or Worse looks like to you?" Linda's voice was steady as she lifted the IUD container. The banned device caught the afternoon light streaming through the window, looking even more vicious in daylight. Gregory's mask began to slip. His eyes darted between the container and the computer screen, calculating how much she knew. "Lynn, you're upset and confused after the surgery. That thing, whatever the hospital told you, there's probably a reasonable explanation." 8 years, Linda interrupted. 8 years you let this rot inside me while you built a life with someone else. Gregory stepped closer, hands raised like he was approaching a dangerous animal. "You don't understand what you're looking at. Medical devices, they migrate sometimes. Get displaced during routine procedures. It happens. Does it happen to include photographing the placement? Because I found those images too." The lie died on Gregory's lips. Linda watched recognition dawn in his eyes. She knew about everything. The surgery photos, the disposal logs, the emails about handling the Linda situation. His gentle facade cracked completely. You had no right to go through my private files, he snapped, lunging toward the computer. Those are privileged communications. Medical records. You could destroy my entire practice with this invasion of privacy. Linda pulled the IUD container closer to her chest. Your practice? You mean the place where you've been slowly murdering your wife for 8 years? Don't be dramatic. Gregory's voice turned cold, clinical. You're menopausal and emotional, making connections that don't exist. One conversation with the medical board, and they'll see you're having some kind of breakdown. The manipulation was so automatic, so practiced. How many times had Gregory used her age against her? Her emotions? Her trust in his medical expertise? Tell me about Tyler and Emma, Linda said quietly. Gregory froze. The names of his children hung between them like loaded weapons. Who told you those names? Erin. While she was buying a pregnancy test. Congratulations, by the way. Is this baby number 3? Gregory's face twisted with rage and panic. The caring doctor disappeared completely, replaced by something desperate and calculating. You don't know what you're destroying, he hissed. One story to the medical board and my career is over. Think about our house, our savings, our retirement. Think about what happens to you when I can't work. Linda felt a strange calm settling over her. After years of his threats disguised as concern, the naked manipulation almost felt refreshing in its honesty. Our retirement? She gestured at the computer screen showing Erin's apartment down payment. You mean the money you've been spending on your real family while telling me we couldn't afford an RV? Footsteps thundered in the hallway. Detective Reeves appeared in the doorway with 2 officers, badges visible, handcuffs ready. Doctor, Gregory Hale, you are under arrest for aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, medical battery, attempted murder, and fraud. Gregory spun toward the door, eyes wild. The transformation was complete. The gentle husband Linda had loved for 17 years was gone, replaced by a cornered predator. This is insane, he shouted at the officers. I'm a respected physician. She's having a mental breakdown. Check her medical history: depression, anxiety, postmenopausal dementia. You have the right to remain silent, Detective Reeves continued, nodding to her colleagues. The officers moved forward. Gregory twisted back toward Linda, desperation cracking his voice. Tell them you misunderstood. Tell them we discussed the procedure and you agreed. You signed surgical consent forms. Linda met his eyes without flinching. I signed consent for appendix removal. Not for you to decide I'd never be a mother. The words hit Gregory like physical blows. His face contorted with rage and disbelief. You ungrateful after everything I've done for you. I gave you 17 years of my life. The officers cuffed his hands behind his back. Gregory struggled against them, still trying to reach Linda. I took care of you, fed you, put a roof over your head when no one else wanted a middle-aged widow. You think you'll do better on your own? At your age? Even in handcuffs, even facing prison, Gregory was still trying to make Linda feel grateful for abuse. Detective Reeves leaned close to Linda as the officers led Gregory toward the door. You don't have to watch this part. Yes, I do, Linda said quietly. I need to see him leave. They marched Gregory through the living room he'd shared with Linda for 17 years. Past the wedding photos on the mantel. Past the diplomas on the wall. Past the anniversary cards Linda had saved in a shoebox, believing they meant something. On the front lawn, neighbors emerged from houses like prairie dogs sensing drama. Mrs. Henderson clutched her watering can. The Johnsons stood in their driveway, phones already recording. Everyone would want to know what had happened to the nice doctor who lived in the house with the perfect landscaping. Gregory twisted in the officer's grip, shouting back at Linda. This will destroy both of us. Think about what you're doing to our reputation, our standing in the community, our reputation. Even now, he expected Linda to protect him. She watched from the porch as they loaded Gregory into the patrol car. Through the window, she could see him still talking, still gesticulating, still trying to convince someone that this was all a misunderstanding. The car pulled away from the curb. Linda stood alone on her front steps, aware of neighbors staring, phones recording, gossip already spreading through the cul-de-sac. For 17 years, she'd worried about what people would think, about maintaining appearances, about being the perfect wife to the respected doctor. Now she felt nothing but relief that the performance was finally over. Detective Reeves approached with paperwork. How are you holding up? Linda looked at her house, their house where she'd lived as Gregory's wife for so long she'd forgotten how to be anything else. Tomorrow there would be reporters, lawyers, court appearances, a future she'd have to build from scratch at 62. I thought I'd feel sadder, Linda said honestly. But mostly I feel like I can breathe again. Detective Reeves smiled. That's your body remembering what safety feels like. Inside the house, Linda's phone was already ringing. Probably reporters. Maybe friends who'd seen the arrest on neighborhood social media. People who wanted the story, the details, the gossip. Linda let it ring. For the first time in years, she didn't feel obligated to answer calls immediately. To explain herself to everyone. To make other people comfortable with her choices. The afternoon sun slanted through her kitchen window, illuminating dust motes in the air. The same light had shone through that window yesterday, but everything looked different now. Yesterday, she'd been Gregory's wife. The victim of crimes she didn't know had been committed against her. Today, she was Linda Carson. Survivor. Witness. A woman who'd looked evil in the face and chosen to stop protecting it. The phone stopped ringing. The house fell quiet except for the hum of appliances and the distant sound of traffic on the main road. Linda walked back to Gregory's office and closed the laptop. The photos of Tyler and Emma disappeared into digital darkness. The children would learn about their father's arrest soon enough. They'd have their own trauma to process, their own betrayals to understand. But right now, in the silence of her own house, Linda Carson was finally free to figure out who she was when no one was controlling her story. For the first time in 8 years, that felt like enough. 6 months later, the Maricopa County Courthouse buzzed with reporters and curious onlookers. A beloved doctor accused of systematically poisoning his own wife made irresistible headlines. Local news had run the story for weeks. Respected Phoenix physician charged with attempted murder. Linda hated every camera flash, every microphone shoved in her face. But she'd learned that silence had protected Gregory once. She wouldn't lend him her silence again. The courtroom smelled like floor polish and nervous sweat. Linda sat in the front row behind the prosecutor's table, wearing a simple navy dress her sister had helped her pick out. Nothing flashy, nothing that would make her look like she was performing for sympathy. Gregory sat at the defense table in an expensive suit, looking every inch the respectable doctor he'd pretended to be. His lawyer had coached him well. Concerned expression, shoulders slightly slumped, the picture of a man wrongly accused by an unstable wife. District Attorney Patricia Hayes called her first witness. Erin Morales walked to the stand on shaking legs, 8 months pregnant with Gregory's third child. Under oath, Erin's story unraveled Gregory's carefully constructed lies. She described meeting Gregory when she was 23 and desperate for steady work. How he'd told her Linda was born infertile and too sick for intimacy. How their marriage was just paperwork to protect his medical practice from lawsuits. He said Linda might not live much longer, Erin testified, voice barely audible. He told me her reproductive system was damaged from childhood illness, that she'd begged him never to have children because pregnancy would kill her. Every word was a lie Gregory had fed to both women, poison disguised as protection. The prosecutor showed Erin emails she'd sent to Gregory, messages thanking him for choosing our family over your legal complications, photos she'd sent of Tyler and Emma with notes like, "Daddy, we can't wait for you to live with us all the time." Gregory's lawyer objected repeatedly, tried to paint Erin as a homewrecker who'd seduced an innocent man, but the jury could see the dates. Erin was 23 when it started. Gregory was 54, a doctor in a position of authority over a young employee desperate for health insurance. Medical experts testified next. Dr. Brooks explained how the banned IUD increased cancer risk exponentially. How the device Gregory had implanted was known to cause uterine perforation and systemic infection. How it had been recalled specifically because women died from complications. In my 30 years of practice, Dr. Brooks said, I have never seen a device this dangerous implanted without informed consent. This was not medical error. This was deliberate harm. Forensic analysts walked the jury through Gregory's computer files. The disposal logs showing he'd officially destroyed the same IUD he'd implanted in Linda. The financial records proving he'd diverted their joint savings to support his second family. The emails bragging about solving the Linda problem during her surgery. Linda's oncologist testified about the precancerous tissue surrounding the IUD. How another year or two of exposure would have meant inoperable cancer. How Gregory's delays in Linda's treatment had accelerated the dangerous progression. Mrs. Carson is alive today because she sought outside medical care, the oncologist said. If she had continued trusting her husband's assessment, she'd be facing terminal cancer within 18 months. Gregory had been murdering Linda on a timeline, slow enough to look natural, fast enough to clear the way for his real family. Then it was Linda's turn. She walked to the witness stand in her navy dress, knees trembling but back straight. The courtroom fell silent except for clicking cameras and rustling papers. She wasn't reading a victim impact statement. She was telling her own story for the first time in her life. Linda described the years of dismissive treatment, how Gregory convinced her that her pain was imaginary, her concerns were hysteria, her desire for children was selfish, how he'd made her grateful for crumbs while stealing her entire future. He used my trust like a surgical instrument, Linda said, voice steady. He cut away my choices, my agency, my hope for children. Then he made me thank him for the operation. She talked about the nights doubled over in pain while Gregory offered useless pills, how he'd scheduled her medical appointments when no one else was around, how he'd trained her to stop asking questions, stop seeking second opinions, stop trusting her own body. I blame myself for not getting pregnant, Linda continued. I thought I was defective, too old, not woman enough. I spent 8 years apologizing to my husband for failing to give him children while he was raising 2 children with another woman. In the gallery, older women wiped their eyes. Men shifted uncomfortably. Everyone recognized some version of this story. The authoritative voice that knew better, the gradual erosion of self-trust, the way love could be weaponized against the person who offered it. Gregory's defense attorney tried to discredit Linda during cross-examination, suggested she was emotionally unstable and seeking attention through false accusations, implied that menopause had made her unreliable and vindictive. But the jury had seen the evidence, the photographs of the banned device, the emails joking about Linda's pain, the financial records showing systematic theft, the medical testimony about deliberate harm. Emotions weren't the issue. Intent was the issue. In his closing argument, Gregory's lawyer painted a picture of medical error and misunderstanding. A devoted husband whose only crime was loving 2 women. A respected physician whose judgment had been clouded by personal feelings. The prosecutor's closing was simpler. She held up the banned IUD and the disposal form Gregory had falsified. She read his emails about handling the Linda situation. She showed the jury the timeline device implantation, precancerous development, financial planning around Linda's estimated death. This wasn't love, the prosecutor said. This was premeditated attempted murder disguised as medical care. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty on all major counts: aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, medical battery, attempted murder, insurance fraud, and theft. The judge scheduled sentencing for the following week. Gregory would face 7 to 15 years in state prison, permanent loss of his medical license, and full restitution for Linda's medical expenses and suffering. As the bailiff led Gregory away in handcuffs, he looked at Linda one last time. Not with love or apology, but with raw hatred, as if she'd betrayed him by refusing to die quietly. Linda felt nothing but relief that his power over her was finally gone. Outside the courthouse, reporters shouted questions. How did it feel to see justice served? Would she forgive her husband? What message did she have for other women? Linda stood in the Arizona sunshine, wearing her navy dress in her own voice. Trust your body, she said simply. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Don't let anyone, doctor, husband, or family, talk you out of your own truth. Then she walked away from the cameras, from the courthouse, from the wreckage of her marriage. For the first time in 17 years, Linda Carson was free to go home to a life that belonged entirely to her. The sound of her own footsteps on the courthouse steps was the sweetest music she'd ever heard. 1 year later, Linda stood in front of a bathroom mirror in a small rental apartment on the edge of Phoenix. The big house was gone, sold as part of the legal settlement, but the space around her finally felt like it belonged to her. Sunlight streamed through windows she'd chosen herself. Plants lined the windowsill, herbs and flowers she'd bought without asking anyone's permission. The refrigerator held food she actually wanted to eat, not meals planned around someone else's schedule. Her oncologist had delivered good news that morning. The precancerous cells had stabilized. Regular checkups and medication had turned countdown to cancer into long-term monitoring. Linda joked with the nurses now, but never forgot how close she'd come to dying. Money was tighter than before. Without Gregory's salary, she lived on Social Security, a modest pension, and what remained after legal fees. But every dollar she spent felt clean. No more wondering what lies had bought the furniture. Twice a week, Linda volunteered at the downtown women's clinic. Not giving medical advice, she wasn't qualified for that, but sitting with women in waiting rooms, sharing questions they might want to ask their doctors. Ask them to explain every medication, she'd say gently. Ask what your options are. If something feels wrong, you have the right to walk away. Some women listen. Others weren't ready. Linda understood both responses. At Thursday evening support group, Linda met women who'd been gaslit by husbands, doctors, even adult children. They traded stories about dismissed pain, ignored concerns, the quiet humiliation of not being believed. Margaret, 73, whose son had been stealing her pension while telling her she was too confused to manage money. Rosa, 58, whose husband convinced her that chronic fatigue was just laziness. Patricia, 65, whose doctor refused to investigate her abdominal pain because women your age complain about everything. Linda learned she wasn't alone. Her story was extreme, but the pattern was common. Authority figures using trust as a weapon. Victims trained to doubt their own experiences. Dr. Ortiz stopped by the clinic's outreach event one evening. He thanked Linda for speaking publicly about her case. 3 other women had come forward because of her courage. There was something soft between them now, more respect than romance. But Linda felt safe being seen by a man for the first time in years. Aaron had sent a letter through her attorney, an apology explaining she was raising 3 children alone now, that she'd been as deceived as Linda, just differently. Linda hadn't responded yet, but she'd folded the letter carefully instead of tearing it up. They'd both been trapped in different corners of the same lie. On the anniversary of Gregory's sentencing, Linda recorded a video for the clinic's website. She sat in front of a simple backdrop in her apartment, speaking directly to women her age watching on phones and tablets. "I want to talk to women who feel invisible," she began, "who've been told their pain doesn't matter, who've learned to apologize for trusting their own bodies." The camera felt less intimidating than she'd expected. Just another conversation with women who needed to hear what she'd learned. If you feel in your bones that something is wrong, that feeling is worth investigating. Your body has wisdom. Your experience has value. Don't let any one doctor, husband, or family member convince you otherwise. She talked about the difference between kindness and manipulation, how real love supported independence, not dependence, how healthy relationships encourage questions, not blind trust. "I wasted years being grateful for treatment that was slowly killing me," Linda said. "I thought gratitude was the same as love. I thought questioning authority was the same as being difficult." She paused, thinking of women watching this video while husbands slept nearby. Women whose own stories were still unfolding. You are allowed to seek second opinions. You are allowed to change doctors. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to protect yourself, even from people who claim to love you. Linda ended with a small smile. "My life isn't perfect now. Money's tight. Some days are lonely. But my voice is mine. My choices are mine. And my future belongs to me." That's richer than any fairy tale I used to believe in. After recording, Linda walked to her small balcony, overlooking the neighborhood. Phoenix stretched toward the mountains, alive with evening light. Cars moved along familiar streets. Families gathered for dinner in houses with glowing windows. Normal lives. Ordinary dramas. Problems that wouldn't make headlines but mattered deeply to the people living them. Linda thought about the woman she'd been a year ago. Grateful for crumbs. Apologizing for existing. Protecting the man who was systematically destroying her. That woman felt like someone she'd known in childhood, distant but not quite forgotten. Her phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Ortiz. "Saw your video. Powerful message. Would you consider speaking at the medical conference next month? Doctors need to hear this." Linda typed back, "Yes, I'm ready." She was ready for a lot of things now. Speaking engagements. New friendships. Maybe even dating, though that felt distant still. Mostly she was ready for whatever came next without asking permission first. The Arizona sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and pink. Linda had watched sunsets from this balcony for months now, but tonight felt different. Like watching the world from her own eyes instead of through someone else's expectations. Inside her apartment, the phone rang. Probably Margaret from support group or Rosa wanting to chat about her doctor's appointment. Women who understood that healing happened in community, not isolation. Linda went inside to answer it. She had all the time in the world for conversations that mattered. At 63, Linda Carson was finally learning what it felt like to live a life that was completely, unapologetically her own. The sound of her own voice saying hello was the sweetest greeting she'd ever